when I was overcoming Crohn's disease, I ended up doing a triathlon and then going on to a half Ironman and then eventually actually doing Ironman France and completing it. And the training that I did for it at the time, it took over a year, and I was probably doing 25 hours a week of training, which is the traditional way to do kind of endurance training. And I had an amazing coach, and it worked. I mean, it worked. I went from being this weak, sick person to being able to actually complete a full-on Ironman. And for those of you who don't know, that is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and then a marathon. So that took about 13 hours and 45 minutes for me to do that. So the training was intense. It was basically like a part-time job, 20, 25 hours a week. And a lot of it was just really grueling because you're on a bike trainer for 4 hours at a time, or actually doing bike races. It's not a lot of fun. And then the eating that goes along with it. But there's a drive there. There's sort of a need to complete. I also then ended up doing Tough Mudder, one of the first ones that was in New Jersey, and it was very, very cold and pretty awful, but we did that too, and that was a lot of fun. So I've always been interested in that kind of stuff and pushing yourself that way. At the time, I didn't know a lot of the biohacking kind of shortcuts that I do, but now if I were to ever go back and do an event like that again, whether it would be an Ironman or some sort of endurance race of some sort, I would rely on the methods of CrossFit Endurance, which I think is now called Power Speed Endurance, from Brian McKenzie. He had a really great 80-20 kind of approach to doing endurance training. And you essentially could do the same effective training like 6 to 8 hours a week. So it had very specific strength training, very specific kind of intervals. So interval training was the really big one there. And things like doing Tabatas or doing what are called fartleks, which is where you're running and you don't ever stop running, but you slow down at times and then you speed up and slow down, or full-on intervals where you run for a minute as fast as you can and then rest for 2 minutes, run as fast as you can for a minute, and then rest for 3 minutes, and those kinds of things. They're really, really, really effective. You end up having less injuries because you're not training for that many hours a week. You also don't have like the adrenal fatigue issues. There are all sorts of things that go along with it. So it's a much more effective way, I think, to get training done. The big thing there, though, is to understand that you're never going, if you're watching this video, you're probably not the person who's going to win Ironman. And that's okay. It's hard for me sometimes to even grapple the idea of doing another Ironman, because if I were to do it and shave off 20 minutes or something, that wouldn't necessarily be a motivating factor for me. So understanding that this is not the method that will get you to win an Ironman, but if you need to complete one, you want to do one, or you want to do some sort of endurance race, this is the way to do it. The other side of this, though, there's two things. There's the mental fatigue issue, and then there's just the mental toughness issue, and they're two different things. So something like Tough Mudder or even an Ironman will hurt you. There are things in it that will physically and emotionally hurt you. In Ironman, for example, when I got to the marathon part, they had these ice cold showers of water that you could run through to cool off, which was a great idea in theory, except I ran through one and my socks got wet. And basically it felt like I was running on broken glass for the next 20 miles, which was pretty awful. In the Tough Mudder that I did, the water was 34 degrees, which was terrible. And it was the first year that they introduced an electric shock obstacle where you had to run through these strings that would shock you. So you kind of wonder, why would anybody want to do this stuff? But you have to develop that sort of mental grit. And that's where there's sort of like a blurry area here, because while you want to be able to train for something like an Ironman in less time, the truth is that the several sessions that I did, the many, many sessions where it was just 4 hours on a bike trainer, not moving, looking at a screen, watching Netflix documentaries on North Korea, basically, it was the most boring thing I could possibly imagine ever. But I needed to sort of train myself to be able to do that. The same thing, the longest training run I ever did, I purposely did it on an indoor track. So I ran for 2 hours around the same track indoors, nonstop. And it was not physically exhausting. It was mentally exhausting. And that's the training that a lot of people never get to. So there's the weighted bat approach. So if any of you are a baseball fan, you know that you see the batter getting ready and he's got that big ring, the weighted ring on the bat so that it's heavy when he hits it, just like wearing weights on your ankles. And the point is that when you take that off, then the actual effort itself becomes more easy. So you have to figure out a way to make it harder on yourself. even if it's for a briefer amount of time. So that's the thing, is you can up the intensity while shortening the duration. So that may mean doing a training run after dumping a bucket of ice water on your head. You don't have to do that for 2 hours straight, but you can do that and then go do a Tabata set for 4 minutes and then you're done. So anything that you can sort of do to make things a little harder on yourself. I wouldn't necessarily recommend dehydrating yourself, but I know lots of people who have decided to do a long run without any water and see what happens. So there's all sorts of technology and things that can make our lives easier and make things cushier for us. I would not only remove those when you're doing training in a lot of cases, but actually make things more challenging on yourself so that when the actual day comes, you can say to yourself, I've been here before and I got through it. Hey, thanks so much for watching my video. If you liked it and you want to see more, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this video with anybody you think would benefit from a little more optimization, automation, and outsourcing in their life. Thanks a lot.